My name is Robert Hayes. I'm 87 years old, and I live alone in a small house just outside a quiet town in Oregon. When people hear that, they usually look at me with a mixture of surprise and concern. An 87-year-old man living alone, driving his own car, fixing things around the house, doing his own groceries. Most people ask me the same question. How do you manage all by yourself? But that's the wrong question. The real question is why so many people my age can't. When I turned 65 and retired from my job as a mechanic, everyone around me started saying the same thing. You should slow down now. You've worked hard your whole life. It's time to rest. At first it sounded reasonable. After all, retirement is supposed to be about rest and comfort, but something about that advice never sat right with me, because the people giving it were the same people who had slowly disappeared from their own lives. They stopped moving, they stopped learning, they stopped trying, and little by little, life stopped showing up for them too. Over the last 20 years, I've watched many of my friends grow old in a way that frightened me. Not because their hair turned gray or their backs got a little bent, but because they stopped living long before their hearts stopped beating. That's when I realized something important. Getting old doesn't destroy your life. Giving up does. Aging well isn't luck. It's a series of choices. The first lesson I learned is that movement is freedom. I saw this happen with my friend George. George was always the strongest man in our group. Big hands, loud laugh. The kind of man who could fix anything. But when he was 72, he slipped on his driveway one icy morning and hurt his hip. It wasn't a serious injury. The doctor told him to rest for a couple of weeks. So George rested, and then he kept resting. He stopped walking to the diner every morning. He stopped working in his garage. Instead, he started spending most of his time in a recliner watching television. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. The strange thing about the human body is that it listens to what you ask of it. If you ask it to move, it grows stronger. If you ask it to sit, it slowly forgets how to move. By the time George was 76, he needed a cane. At 79 he needed help climbing stairs. At 81 he moved into assisted living, not because he had a terrible disease, but because he had stopped moving. Watching that happen scared me more than any illness ever could. So when I turned 70, I made a promise to myself. I would move every single day no matter what. Nothing extreme. Just a 2-mile walk every morning. Rain or shine, summer heat or winter cold. Some mornings my knees complained. Some mornings my back felt stiff. But I walked anyway, because I understood something George didn't. Movement isn't exercise. Movement is independence. If you can walk, you can live on your own terms. The second lesson took me longer to understand. It's about loneliness. People are terrified of being alone as they get older. My wife Margaret passed away when I was 68. We had been married for 41 years. When she died, the silence in the house felt unbearable. Every chair reminded me of her. Every room carried memories. Friends told me I should move closer to my children. My daughter even suggested I sell the house and move into a retirement community. "Dad, you shouldn't be by yourself," she said. I knew she meant well, But something inside me resisted that idea, not because I didn't love my family, but because I didn't want my entire life to revolve around needing someone else. So I stayed in the house. At first the loneliness felt like a heavy coat I couldn't take off. Nights were the hardest. But over time something changed. The silence stopped feeling painful and started feeling peaceful. In that quiet, I began rediscovering things about myself. I started reading again. I planted a small garden in the backyard. I even signed up for a woodworking class at the community center. That's when I realized something most people never learn. Being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. Sometimes solitude is where you remember who you are. The third lesson came from my older brother Daniel. Daniel retired with a good pension and plenty of savings. But when he retired, he also retired from having a purpose. For 40 years his identity had been his job. When that disappeared, he didn't know who he was anymore. He started sleeping late, watching television all afternoon, waiting for weekends so his kids might visit. But his children had their own lives and responsibilities. Slowly Daniel began feeling forgotten. One afternoon when he was 74, he told me something I'll never forget. He said, "I feel like the world moved on without me." The truth was, the world hadn't moved on. He had stepped out of it. That's when I realized retirement isn't the end of purpose. It's the beginning of a new one. These days I volunteer twice a week fixing bicycles for kids in the neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just tightening brakes, replacing chains, patching tires. But when a kid rides away smiling on a bike that works again, I feel useful. And usefulness is powerful medicine. The fourth lesson might be the hardest of all. You have to decide who you are before other people decide for you. When you get older, people start treating you differently. Doctors talk to your children instead of talking to you. Strangers assume you're confused. Even family members start suggesting what they think is best for you. Sometimes they're right, but sometimes they're just afraid. A few years ago my son suggested that I should stop driving. He said it gently and with love, but I knew what it meant. Once you give up one piece of independence, the rest tend to follow. First driving, then shopping, then managing your own home. Before you know it, someone else is making every decision. So I told him something simple. I said, "The day I feel unsafe driving, I'll hand over the keys myself." But that day hasn't come yet. I still pass my vision tests. I still drive carefully. And I still enjoy the freedom of going wherever I want when I want. Independence isn't stubbornness. It's self-respect. Now some people might say I've just been lucky. And maybe I have been a little lucky. Life always contains some luck. But luck alone doesn't explain why some people stay alive in spirit while others slowly fade away. The difference, as far as I can tell, is how you respond to aging. You can treat it like a slow surrender, or you can treat it like a challenge. At 87, I know my time is limited. That thought doesn't scare me anymore. In fact, it frees me, because when you realize time is precious, you stop wasting it waiting for life to happen. You start participating in it again. Every morning I wake up, make a cup of coffee, and walk down the same quiet road. The sun rises over the trees, and the air smells fresh. For those 30 minutes, I don't feel old. I just feel alive. And that, more than anything, is what aging well really means. Not pretending you're young and not denying the years, but refusing to disappear while you're still here. So if you're 60, or 70, or even 80, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me earlier. It's not too late to change the direction of your life. Start moving your body. Start finding a new purpose. Learn how to enjoy your own company. And most importantly, decide who you are before the world decides for you. Because getting old is unavoidable, but becoming small is a choice. And life, even at 87, is far too interesting to shrink away from it now. If something in my story spoke to you, I'd love to hear about it. Leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. And if you'd like, I can also share the 3 unexpected truths about living alone in your later years. The things nobody warns you about until you experience them yourself. Until then, take care of yourself, and remember this: as long as you keep showing up for life, life will keep showing up for you.